Hello everybody and welcome to this NBS webinar. Today we're going to look at information exchanges and the RIBA Plan of Work 2020, but specifically around developing specifications. Everybody's on mute, but you can ask questions that we'll follow up afterwards with using the question box on your screen. If you want to put any comments on social media, we'll keep an eye on the hashtag #NBSwebinar as well. So hopefully everybody's seen the RIBA Plan of Work 2020, and it covers different strategies and processes and things through a project timeline. The bottom taskbar looks at the key information exchanges. So what information needs to be generated at the end of every stage. And it's a little bit small on the screen here, but you'll see that specification is one of those key document types at the end of stage 2, end of stage 3, and end of stage 4 there, going from outline through to final. So we're going to focus on specification today in today's webinar. We have an external speaker, Patrick Crocock from AHMM, Specification Lead there. And we'll also hear from Paul Swaddle, one of my colleagues at NBS, who's our Head of Technical Solutions. So over to you, Patrick.
Thank you, Stephen, and good morning, everybody. I hope my audio is okay. As Stephen has mentioned, my name is Patrick, and I'm the Specification Lead at AHMM. And in this morning's webinar, I will be discussing how AHMM approach specification development and then the exchange of that information throughout the RIBA Plan of Work process. I will be mostly focusing on stages 2 to 5, but I will touch on the other work stages. For this webinar, I'm going to be concentrating on a D&B contract with possible novation and the information exchange itself, so the output of specification. I've always had a thought process that to be prepared is always half the victory, and it's no different to specifications. I think preparation at the outset and the planning of your strategy always eases the burden of completing the specification during each work stage, and it also eliminates risks of inconsistency or incomplete information. To begin at AHMM, when we start looking at specs, the factors that influence the specifications I think are most important. We always begin looking at the employer's design vision. We believe the pursuit strategy is dependent on their specific requirements. The procurement route, whether it's traditional or D&B, and then the design responsibilities associated within those, so contractor design portions of work. We look at the building elements, the material system and products that could be incorporated into those. Classification, so we'll be using the common arrangement of work section or a uniclass. Therefore, we then look at what software we will be using to write the specification. So for NBS, it will be NBS Create or Chorus. For this presentation and webinar, I will be focusing on Chorus and Uniclass 2015. We have our own in-house technical system sheets and technical systems codes. These help align the specification and the drawings, so it makes it easier for the contractor to be able to navigate between both. And they align again with the model. And then the final specification production itself. For design responsibility, we look at stages 0-1, and in collaboration with the client and the rest of his design team, we produce a design responsibility matrix similar to the one here. It's a preliminary design responsibility, which just sets on the outset who has primary responsibility, so who leads and manages and coordinates and develops the scope of each package. Secondary responsibility, who provides calculations, modeling, and any advice. And then contribution is required, so they maintain an awareness of the general development of each stage and the design process. Across the top, we have the project team. And then in the right-hand columns, we have the constructors team, so their main contractor, if there is a demolition contractor involved, our trade specialist contractor. And also there's a column for design responsibility, whether it's afforded to the contractor's design team or not. So here is a small sample of one that's filled in. And here is one with a bit of scope on architectural, structural and mechanical. So as you can see, those who have primary responsibility have the P, secondary have the S, and contribution have the C. That brings me on to concept design and the process involved in AHMM. Again, we're going to look at the core task, the procurement route, design and build, and then the output at the end, the deliverable. First of all, the project lead or project architect will use our own in-house templates for outline, specification, and technical sheet system. This just outlines some general requirements, talks about project contract and participants, some definitions of design responsibility, definitions for statutory requirements, some submittal and substitution definitions in relation to the processes involved at early stage, product execution and quality control clauses, some testing and performance requirements, and some clauses for certification, declarations of performance, and environmental performance declarations. And here's an example of our design responsibility matrix. So on the left-hand column at the top, we have our consultants. On the right-hand column at the top, we have some general notes and some key requirements. And then we have our model and drawings with the level of model geometry and information, and the drawing level of detail, which are in line with the NBS definitions. Then we have the key to specifications, so our levels 1 to 5, which correlate with the NBS definitions. We have some acronyms in relation to who are the owners of different items and what the different items are. So we have model element author, level of detail in the model, level of information in the model, level of drawing information, and level of specification information. Then we have primary responsibility for the package and contributions, whether it's a contractor design portion of work, and of course a work package number. And then we have our color code system that relates to release of information in line with the NBS definitions during each work stage. And now we'll move on to the main page. So we have our works package number, which is in line with the classification system for Uniclass 2015, our description of the works, and primary responsibility for the works package, and then the contributions. And then where it's a CDP portion of work. Then we have the model element author, the level of detail in the model, geometric detail, the level of information in the model, the 2D drawing level of detail, and the specification level of information, and then our Kobe drops. So it's very basically, we come along, we fill in the columns that are related to who's got primary responsibility and who contributes, whether it's a contractor design portion. So we enter yes, and it changes the color to indicate that it is contractor design. And then gradually, as we go through, the model element author will be the architect for this package for full frame panel cubicle systems, and again, plasterboard systems. And then we fill it in accordance with what our scope of work is for each design stage. So we may be producing level 2 of information in the geometric detail in the model, 1 for information in the model, 2 for drawing information, and 2 for specification information. And then whether we have a Kobe drop or not. This is our design responsibility output. So as you can see, we have all our consultants on one side. And then this is the full output with all the categories filled in and all the levels in accordance with the NBS definitions. Now we move on to allocating our technical system codes. It's very early stage in the development, so we normally start with a single stage system. And our codes are based on our Keynote file. And here is the template on show. And as you can see, here is our frame partition systems. This is the building element classification number in accordance with CISFB, so it's in 22 series. We have whether it's a contractor design portion or not. So in this case, it's yes, because it's a DMB route. We have our system code, which is the specification link, which is the classification number for Uniclass 2015. And then we have an additional enhanced column for specific nodes, some system descriptions, or if we want to input certain materials and finishes. That brings us on to spatial coordination stage 3. Again, we look at specification in the core task, again, design and build as the procurement route, and then our updated outline specification as our deliverable. For this, we incorporate a new general requirements section. We like to start this early at stage 3. We discuss the terminology between the client and consultants and keep it consistent, so any terms that would be used throughout the whole project and in line with the contract. We keep the same format. We try and capitalize it if it's a defined term in your general requirements. So if it's a working drawing, it's capitalized, or a contractor, it's capitalized. There's additional documentation contained within it, or references to any additional documentation that supports the specification and drawings. We further go into submittals, substitutions, and we discuss about samples, mock-ups, benchmarks, and work quality. We have clauses for testing, CDM, sustainability, and the aspirations of the client. We also include the design life, service life, and some clauses about fire, especially in relation to the new changes to the approved documents. And then we have clauses about the processes involving the review of submittals, working drawings, or any other documentation that has been submitted by the contractor. Then we look at the stage 3 spec development. So we have multiple systems now developed. So now we need additional codes for these multiple systems. We look at a descriptive specification, which we include employer's requirements and any performance. We sometimes include prescriptive information for keeping some design influence. We then update our design responsibility matrix to be in line with our stage 3 scope. And then we have our specification output. So at stage 3, we look at managing our design responsibility. So we have discussions with the employer. We discuss about what is going to be a contractor design portion of work and what design responsibility will be made with the consultant. And at this stage, if there is a preferred or nominated contractor, or there may be some PCSAs to be put in place, we may enter into negotiations with these. So here is our stage 3 progress for our design responsibility matrix. We have stage 2 already included in here. So now we just move on to the next phase. So the model level of detail may have moved on now to stage 3. The model level of information may have remained at stage 1. The drawing level of detail has now progressed to 3, and the specification has also moved on to 3. And for this stage, we might look at putting in additional notes within the works package or for any tender deliverables. And now we have our design responsibility matrix output. And as you can see, all the columns have been filled in relation to the scope that has been developed in line with our contractual obligations. Now we look at our specification production. First of all, we go and we open our in-house outline office master. We know we want to copy it and place it into a project folder. We have our project folder already created. We go into our projects, we select the project we want to put it into, and then we copy it in. Then we open that specification document, and it's already some pre-written clauses are in here. So then we go in and we open up our document specifications. These are already with our pre-written clauses in line with the office master. So we're going to search for this webinar gypsum board again. Here we have our partition systems. And as you can see, I've already started to nominate some of these. And how this is done is we use the suffix clause to develop our T-sheet codes. And occasionally we may use the prefix clause to put in our package code in line with CISFB. So here we see we have our system descriptions, we have our system performance. These are just basic project holders for performance requirements. So as we develop our specification, we can go through and select each one, and we change them in accordance with performance. So for this FPS 102, this may have just some acoustic performance in it. So we've removed the fire. For this partition system, FPS 104, there may be no requirements for acoustic, but it may have fire requirement. And for FPS 103, there may be no other requirements other than it may need some structural improvements for the allowance of weight of some loadings in relation to ceramic tiles, shelving, sanitary ware. So when we have all this in place, we move back into our model. And now we know that we have different partition systems. So here, our frame partition system FPS 101, we know now has become FPS 103 because it's non-rated and just may be used for carrying additional weights and loadings. So we go into our annotation, we change it to FPS 103, and we update it as then this is then updated within our schedules that I showed you earlier. And then this becomes then our output. So as you can see, we have our model, a section, and a plan. And at the bottom, we have our T-sheet annotations. This is our specification output in relation to what we've just been looking at. So again, we've got our performance, we've got some general requirements. We're asking the system manufacturer and any damp-proof courses, any framing oil, for the contractor to submit proposals, because we're only at stage 3. It's a contractor design portion of work. We have some clauses about fire separation, some linings to be included. We may have some sample requirements, a little bit of text about the system accessories, and then about just general execution in relation to it. And then we have our updated T-sheet, technical systems codes, and here you can see where we've added the extra partition systems. Sometimes during projects, if they're quite complex, we may be asked for a simple system samples matrix. This is generated by the project architect to look for elements that we might want samples for, mock-ups, some visual mock-ups, prototypes and benchmarks. These are all described within our general requirements section and what one it needs to perform to. At present, this is just a manual system, but we hope that with the progressions of Revit, that we can make this as an automatic export, or hopefully in time with the development of MBS cores, that this may also be an automated export. So with all those documents in place, then they are then released to the client. Then we move on to our technical design stage 4. Again, the same process. Our core task is a specification, procurement route is design and build, and the deliverable is final specifications output. As we know now, there's an overlap between stage 4 and stage 5. So we try to accommodate this in relation to our specification outputs, how we manage our design responsibility, and then how we integrate that into our stage 5, our stage 4 residual information. Again, we go through our stage 4 development. So now we've development of systems in line with design responsibility. We have descriptive specifications, which contain contractor design portions of work. And then we have fully prescriptive specifications, which are fully designed by the consultant. We develop our design responsibility matrix in line with those responsibilities. And then we have our specification production. Is this the final issue? And then the inclusion of some operation and maintenance manuals, etc. We always get asked about spares, but I think because spares are more of a cost issue, that sphere should be discussed between the client and the contractor. And then, as I've said, there's an overlap between stage 5, so we call this stage 4 residual. So how we manage our design responsibility. So we again enter negotiations with the preferred or awarded contractor. If we're novated, we look at the transfer of the contractor obligations and responsibilities onto the consultant, which would be the novated architect in this case, or to their subcontractor. So here again, we have our design responsibility matrix. We've already completed RIBA stages 2 and 3, and now we move on to RIBA stage 4. We have a line down in the matrix, which is where we initiate our tender documents, and then the contract is formed between the client and the contractor. So within this, we have on the left-hand side, the information the design team will be producing for stage 4, and then the information that the contractor will be producing for stage 4. So where something now is not a contractor design portion of work, we remove the clause. And then we develop our levels in accordance with this. So we may be producing stage 3 in geometric information. The model information may move up to stage 2, but our drawing level of details will be 4 and 4. While the one above, which is contractor, again, our model level may be 2. The information in the model could be 1, but our drawing level of detail will be 3 or possibly 4, but our specification will be 3 again, which will be performance-based. And again, we complete our table for the design team, and then we move on to the contractors team. So because the contractor is going to be the model element author at this stage, so the obligation passes from the architectural team to the contractor team. This goes in here, and then we fill out what levels that they're being producing. So at this stage, they will be producing 4 for each element. And then we continue and complete our table. So here's our stage 4 design responsibility matrix output. And as you can see, the tender line or the contract line, we have our, in this case, our architectural submissions in relation to design responsibility, and then our contractor submissions in relation to design responsibility. And then now we go into our model. And as you can just see at this stage, our model has progressed quite significantly. Our previous Revit codes have now been replaced by the codes that have been generated from linking the model to the specification. So we're still keeping our tags. So the CLG 101 tag is in relation to the suffix that was included in the the NBS core specification. We have our classification, SS 30 25 10 10, and then we have our system description in line with the Uniclass 2015 classification. So now we go in, we open our specification clause within NBS cores, and as you can see, it has progressed significantly. We have included manufacturers and some specific products, and we have parked the clauses that we don't need in relation to this. And then we have included some execution clauses for installation. We still at this stage may keep some performance requirements, which may allow the contractor to substitute these products out, even though the design responsibility at this current stage could be with the architect. And then we go in to our specification, and we then go and we output what we need, and we publish our selection. I'm just going to go in now and link the drawing to the spec. I'm in. So now we go in, we select the element that we want to link again, we go into our model, we look for the associated. So here we have some wall systems. And then we select whichever one we want to link, and then we associate it. So now we have all our clauses linked to the specification and to the model. And then this is our model output. So we have just a small general portion. Then we have the model itself. And then we have, in this selection here, we've got our sanitary items all compiled in our little T-sheet notification. And then when we export that, and here we have our technical system code output. We have all our frame partitions here on one side, the building elements in accordance with CISFB. And here we can see that previously what was all contractor design portion is now only a certain element. We've got the particular ratings to each partition system, and again our code in relation to Uniclass 2015 classification. And then we have our specification with our prescriptive output. So here we've got no system performance clauses at all. It's full responsibility for the design team, in this case the architect. And then we have our descriptive output, which does have our inclusion of our performance clauses. And then we go through, we have our materials clauses, products, and so on and so forth, down into our execution. We move on then to stage 5, manufacturing and construction. Again, as pointed out, there's an overlap with stage 4. So we then develop our design responsibility matrix, or as I call it, stage 4 residual information. So again, we open up our design responsibility matrix. Now we have our stage 5 information. And now this is completed, which would include any information that has been carried over from stage 4. This would include any submissions by the contractor that have to be updated. We may have had more guidance from the client. Maybe they want to substitute a product out for cause or for cost. It may be a long lead item that maybe not arrive on time, or they may have a particular product that can get that does the same technical requirements, performance requirements as one that was previously selected within the specification. And now we have our stage 5 for our design responsibility matrix. And here we have all the columns filled out. So we have stage 5 information, which are actually trial products of manufacturers that are used to complete the works. The stage 5 with an overlap of stage 4. This may include some changes to the tender documentation in relation to with the contractor. Maybe he has some substitution of products in relation to cost, or maybe for cause, it may be a long lead item, and his technical submission meets the requirements of the previously specified product. Or maybe there has been a design change and the client maybe wants to change the look of something, or maybe take out a material, swap it with some other finish. They may have certain requirements in relation to if it may be an office fit out, maybe that some tenant might have some particular requirements. Here we have the output of our stage 5 design responsibility matrix, or stage 4 residual information. The one thing about this design responsibility matrix is that all these stages can be filled in early, so that when you're working at RIBA stage 3, you could be filling in actually RIBA stage 4 and 5 if you're in consultation with the preferred nominated contractors or subcontractors, or indeed with the client. This could be done throughout the whole process prior to each work stage. So our stage 5 tasks, including residual stage 4, is amending specification for manufacturing construction. As mentioned previously, anything that may be a substitution by the contractor, or maybe a design change in line with a client requirement in relation to a tenant fit out. We review mock-ups and prototypes that we have specified within the specification. We review contractors' proposals, their working drawings, construction drawings, and any technical information that they have submitted for compliance. We do inspections and certifications throughout stage 5. We look at design intent and benchmarking and accepted construction. So where we have looked for a benchmark of a construction technique on site, it could be the first 5 linear meters of a wall lining that has been installed, the specialist system. So then that would be in the specification. So then the contractor would know that it's a requirement that it has to be reviewed on site by the architectural team prior to being signed off as acceptable. And then we review the contractor's documentation, so maybe his submittals for operation and maintenance manuals, etc. And then we go through a final review and our sign off. We move into stages 6 and 7, handover and use. There isn't really much about specifications in this part, but some of our tasks are that we review the remedial works post practical completion and any documentation that has been submitted in relation to specifications for alterations of materials or a new method of construction that has to be remedial work on it. We manage the handover for soft landings to enable use of the building as intended and support the client in operation. And the feedback of that is placed into our templates. We assist with handover strategies, the operational manual input, any of the CDM strategies. And again, these are all reviewed and placed back into AHMM specification templates. Then we generate an internal stage 6 report, and part of this is also included with specifications. And we look at the materials, products and systems that have been used on site and some of the construction methods. And again, this is all fed back into our AHMM specification templates, which is quite good for new projects that are coming up. And then under a separate appointment, we look at post-occupancy evaluations. So that kind of concludes what the webinar is today. In summary, you should look at the employer stage 0-1 and their brief. Plan your strategy in relation to this for your specifications. Early collaboration with consultants, the employer's design team, and any contractors that may be nominated. Define and allocate the agreed design responsibility, and the earlier this can be done, the better, because it will make your specification development easier to manage. And then build your specification accordingly through each work stage. As pointed out, I've gone through the stages that AHMM have in-house and the practices that we use. And then the importance of associations with the building regulations, approved documents and standards. So always be aware, and lucky we have our own in-house teams to manage that. So thank you everybody for listening, and I'll hand back over to you, Stephen.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Fascinating to see how you sort of develop that information all the way through the project timeline. Okay, over to Paul Swaddle now, one of my colleagues at NBS.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Patrick. I think these slides carry on neatly from Patrick's presentation, picking up on some of the aspects that you've shown us, and I'm going to go through some of the key areas where specification practice is referenced in the plan of work, look at how that information develops across the project, and then I'll show you NBS course and how it can be used to specify in accordance with the plan of work deliverables. So looking at the specification in the plan of work itself, as Patrick's mentioned, specifications are listed as part of the key information exchanges at the end of stage 2, 3 and 4, covering that concept, spatial and technical design stage. But furthermore, the information exchanges of asset information and the building manual should be developments of what has been specified. So it would be easy to think of those 3 evolutions of the specification detailed in the plan of work as the defined outputs that are required. But the plan of work is deliberately flexible to accommodate thinking about specification and information exchange more broadly. As Patrick says, stage 2 and 3 and 4 are about advancing information in both documentation and the model, inputting that information as the design advances. But from the very earliest requirements of the client, they're feeding through, and those requirements should stay fairly constant, other than client variations, across the project itself. They feed into the brief, and then into the spec as it develops. Equally, as the final spec is developed, approaching tender, that information forms part of the asset information exchange, which will be a combination of all kinds of different reports and surveys and summaries. And the asset information is also developing across the project, and that then informs the building manual, which will contain health and safety, operations and maintenance information. The plan of work also goes into quite a lot of depth about descriptive and prescriptive information. Descriptive being predominantly performance-based, and prescriptive being kind of detailed and eventually product-specific. Because in addition, the plan of work clearly shows that the technical design and manufacturing construction stages may overlap to recognise that increase in specialist subcontractor design. It also indicates that stages 4 and 5 will overlap significantly in the project timeline. Some things will be moving into manufacturing and construction, and other things will still continue to be finely designed. However, each building system will follow a linear path through the plan of work. Patrick showed the design responsibility matrix, and at stage 2, if not before, the plan of work recommends that a design responsibility matrix is prepared. Fundamentally, it's often about defining how far each part of the specification is going to be taken for each package or building system by a designer. That design responsibility matrix, in combination with the model, the technical sheet codes and summaries, allows all that information to be coordinated. So let's look at information development across the project. Some of this information is from the plan of work and the overview, and some from the RIBA job book. From first principles of the client needing the project, the specification information is forming. For example, in the job book exemplar project, there's a high-level selection of an environmental standard, which is a form of evolving specification, because all the subsequent decisions have to meet the requirements of achieving that accreditation later down the line. Equally, in the strategic definition, the initial brief and the final brief, there's a real indication that quality has to be defined at a very early stage in terms of design, materials, construction, the expected life of the building, and outline specifications for specific areas of interest. And there's a whole section of the job book dedicated to quality and understanding how to define and achieve high quality buildings. Clearly, on the back of the Hackett review, there's so much focus now on quality in buildings. And an interesting point in the job book that a building's new user has no way of establishing whether a newly built project has the potential to be of poor quality, despite it passing planning conditions and complying with building regulations. Defining quality long term is going to require an improvement across the industry. It notes that it can be very difficult to change the functionality or impact of a building once a project has passed tender, and that actually, in contrast, the build quality and construction quality of a project is entirely reliant on post-tender. But to survive intact, those things of functionality and impact and quality design has to be clearly baked into the construction drawings and specification and not subject to uninformed variation. So at outline spec stage, we broadly know what specifications we want and what drawings and schedules are going to come out of the modelling information. According to the RIBA Plan of Work, an outline specification fulfills a number of purposes. First, it conveys to the client team the quality of the proposed finishes, presented via sample boards at a design review. And second, it allows a cost consultant to align a cost plan with the budget and the level of specification appropriate to the design team's quality aspirations for each building system. Furthermore, the outline specification should pick up relevant specification items against core strategies, for example, conservation, fire safety, health and safety, accessibility, plan for use and sustainability. And that contributes towards the planning and procurement and cost strategies. It notes that the technical information is critical here, and clearly MBS is a great way of finding, accessing the British standards and ISOs that you may need to reference. It's suggested that to supplement the building systems information, sections from the preliminaries should be included in the outline spec. This includes a summary of the project information, environmental information, project performance, approval processes. And MBS Chorus will support this by allowing customers to export a summary of building systems from Uniclass 2015 specifications. And in a summary sheet similar to this is just a mock-up for the purposes of this presentation. Each building system may in addition include details about finishes, and those systems may link back to the sample boards where physical or digital imagery is used as part of the wider architectural concept. So it's important to understand that there's a combination of project management or preliminary information and the building system summary themselves. But you can see the kind of information that's required at outline stage, the classification, the design responsibility, the building system, some type codes, and then that description is really concise. It's just about the key information that needs to be communicated at this stage. At stage 3, this idea of an updated outline is not about rekeying this into a new set of documentation. It simply develops an MBS chorus as more information is added to form the updated outline specification, progressing towards more detail and references in the specification. Essentially, an updated version of the outline, it should be about coordinating information from all the designers, whether that's architects, services engineers, structural engineers, landscape architects, and subcontractors, to enable the technical design stage to be completed without further major iterations to the plan. It should also help to develop and refine the cost plan and align it with project budget, and allow enough information to be added to allow building regulations and planning applications and so on to be submitted. Updating it is a coordination exercise. The plan of work talks about collating information as it comes to hand, and removing that mindset that the specification is something to be done after design development. Instead, it's an integral part of the evolving information. It notes that spec writing is part of the design process and should be undertaken by the designer. The structure of the specification will start to look relatively fixed at this stage, with as many systems as possible coordinated with the model. That will include combination and coordination of specifications from multiple sources, something MBS Chorus is very much aiming to do, agreeing work packages with contractors and scheduling subcontracts, and always defining which are prescriptive and descriptively designed. At final spec stage, stage 4, there's an awareness of the need for performance descriptive and prescriptive information at this stage, and MBS gets a name check here. By final specification, all the specification systems and products should also ideally be coordinated with the model. That's not always the case, but it should certainly be the aim. Worth noting that in the plan of work and the overview and the job book, MBS Create is mentioned. Clearly we would recommend MBS Chorus as our new specification platform, so the plan of work was published prior to Chorus becoming available. It also notes that at this design stage, a full specification is completed for each building system by each of the designers, and that is so much about defining that quality of workmanship, of materials, of build quality for the systems and products and how they're to be executed on site. And that's what MBS is best known for. Procurement is not stage-specific activity in the plan of work. The timing of it is dependent on the procurement route applied, but the prescriptive-descriptive specification as agreed is about consolidating that final detailed information into tendered documents. And under some procurement routes, there may be preliminary notes and specifications that are used for tender purposes quite early, but the plan of work notes that it's important to realise that there may not be sufficient detail at stage 3, so the procurement can be quite flexible in terms of where it sits based on the procurement routes that are used. It does indicate a hint towards the kind of content of the specification, consideration of quality, materials, workmanship, and also reference to standards, the operations and maintenance, health and safety, all of that great technical content that MBS can help you to specify. At stage 5, Patrick mentioned that they have residual stage 4 information and that's defined in their appointment terms to allow for this, amending the documentation and the final outputs in relation to the variations required. The trade contractors need to align and agree what they're doing. And then finally, extending the duties of the team to handover is soft landings. And the approach in the plan of work indicates that that includes specification and construction. So the procedures established in those early requirements in briefing stages, reviewing the likely performance against those expectations and achieving the specific requirements. So let's have a look now at MBS Chorus and how it can help you to specify. So on screen, I've got MBS Chorus open, and I'm using a sample specification here. If you do want to see more detail around MBS Chorus, we've got a host of great demos and onboarding sessions available via our website, so do get in touch with us. But I've gone into a sample project for the purposes of this demonstration, and I've got two systems within this specification. In here, there's a door set system and a window system. And I'm going to show you how easy it is to add content and start building up an outline spec at this stage. So when you click Add Content, you're taken to the MBS search engine, and I can search for the term door set, and I'm presented with a set of results. And by clicking on these results, I see guidance on the right-hand side. And this is the technical guidance authored by our teams with reference to British standards, Euronorms, ISOs, some indication of the clause types and information that's going to be in there, but also great wealth of technical information to help you to specify. And you can access that for all of these systems within the search results. If I want to add a system to my job, all I do is just click on this plus button here. So I'm going to add a new door set system to the job. And you can see here it's been added to the contents on the left-hand side. I'm also going to search for a window system. And here I'm going to look for the external window systems. Click on that to check that it's the system that I'm looking for and the type of content that I'm expecting to be in there. You can see all of these performance clauses. And I'm going to add that to my job. Then when you open up a system within the editing panel within MBS Chorus, what you're presented with is what we call the system outline, a clause that's a generator for all of the content that you're wanting to add. So there's no long list of clauses to go through and to have to delete. It's about adding the content that's relevant to you. So for the door set system, we could suggest that this is a prescriptive specification. You can indicate what the purpose of it is. So school door sets, that it's fully designed. So there's an indication of the type of prescriptive nature, and also indications about what the purpose of this particular specification is. And that may be all the descriptive information that's required. If there's information from the client, you could also define those within the sort of brief here. So requiring a wood finish, high durability, and anti-finger traps, which would be required for a school. And you can see how easy it is there to just embed that information of the descriptive field into this door set system. What you'll then see then is that we have different clauses that allow you to start to specify from this. At this stage, if it is very prescriptive, I may choose to park the system performance in its entirety out of the system outline, and just to have an indication of manufacturers, the door set systems that I'm looking at, so in this case wanting to specify wood door sets, and the ability to view guidance associated with this all the way through the development of the specification, whether that's about the standards that are relevant, things that are specific to the type of project that I'm looking at. All of this guidance can be interrogated, and these references will take you off to read those via our MBS publication index. And so I can add wood door sets to the job, for example, here. Alternatively, for the window systems, I may be wanting to work on a descriptive project. So at this stage, this building system is going to be descriptive and performance-based, and that this could be the specification for school windows. Performance specification only, and leaving the full design to contractor team. But there may be some client requirements still within this. So the client requirements in this case might be anti-vandalism, or there may be specific aesthetic requirements, copper flashings, hardwood sills, that then need to be taken into consideration. But you can see how easy it is to develop the description here. And if you've got a defined brief, you can drop that in there too. And that may be all that's required at the very early stage of the project. But in this case, for the descriptive, we may want to park things like manufacturer, and the actual indication of the window units may become contractor's choice. Or could be submit proposals to allow for an approval process. But the majority of the information we're wanting to add here is about system performance. So all of these clauses are available to you in terms of particular aspects like U values, weather tightness, air permeability, and solar factor. And again, there's comprehensive guidance to help you work through those clauses. And just a case of adding those to the job as required. Each one of these is a clause hyperlink that you're adding more content to the specification as you go through. But this outline specification in its own right is about listing all of the aspects that you need to specify, update it, keep evolving it and developing it as design decisions are made. This isn't an activity to do late in the project. This is something to do as the design is developing. So Stephen has prepared previously a fuller example of these particular systems. So here's our door set system in its prescriptive nature, with specifications for the wood door sets, for the weather strips and seals, for anti-finger traps and so on that might be required, but also huge amount of execution, workmanship, installation clauses that really indicate exactly how things are prescribed to be done, and making sure that the verification of that initial requirement is going to be carried out by those who are working on that project. Alternatively, the external window system, when you go through that in a bit more detail, is about the performance of this system. So here's our weather tightness, thermal transmittance, fire resistance ratings, and security performance, and much of the content left to contractors' design or the options for the subcontractor teams. But still, this indication of what is required in terms of specifics for best build quality and verification of performance. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Paul, and thank you also, Patrick, as well from earlier. Just got a few questions which came in before the webinar, and also some of the ones that have came in over the last few weeks to us. The first question here to Paul. We talked a bit about manufacturer information and whether you find that on the web or you find it inside the source, MBS source system that you mentioned. How can specifiers have confidence that the manufacturer's declaration of performance is what's correct?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think in the past, obviously, specifiers have had to rely on lots of different ways of accessing manufacturer information and trying to keep that information up to date and ensure that they were getting the latest information about performance. One of the things that MBS Source is aiming to do is to make third-party certification more prominent. So being able to verify against things like declaration of performance, and also to be able to compare like-for-like products and filter between different products as well. So hopefully with MBS Source, that's one of the ways that we're making sure manufacturer information is up to date.
And sticking with yourself, Paul, there was that nice illustration you had of what you call the golden thread of information developing through the timeline and seeing what's changed. Like, to get into specifics, like, how does that actually work with Chorus in terms of revision, cover sheets and things?
Yeah, MBS Chorus has continued to develop different functionality over the past few months, and in particular, releasing the first draft, really, the first part of the revision history functionality. So we intend to develop more of that in terms of being able to provide a full and complete revision history. What you can do currently is being able to see removed, amended, and added clauses within the specification, and a kind of summary of the things that have changed. We've also got the ability to see who last edited content, And so we're staging those releases of revision information in MBS Core.
And we're moving on to Patrick. Now, when you talked about the outline spec and the updated outline spec at stages 2 and 3, and the list of all of the building systems with responsibility, etc., do you really know exactly which building systems are going to the job at that early stage?
The approach that we try and to use at AHMM is that, as you've seen on my slides for stage 2, that at the earliest stage we try and select the materials, the building elements, and maybe some possible manufacturers that might be available, depending on the employer's design aspirations. And then as we gradually go through each work stage, we then select the ones that are more suitable, not just based on appearance, but also we look at EPDs, certification requirements, production, installation, and then in use. So it's possibly the best practice is that at early stage, what you want to see is the best thing to actually put in, because primarily that is the one that goes in for planning, and then gradually through the design process, if certain items need to be, value engineered out or whatever, that takes place.
Yeah, and sticking with you, Patrick, with these sort of cloud tools, did you ever envisage the day where you'd actually invite, say, a specialist manufacturer into the specification to help you write the specification, or do you still see that being emails and telephone calls back and forward?
And I've always found that when you get the information from manufacturers and start to input it into the specification, it's very time consuming. While now with the functionality within MBS cores where you can actually invite manufacturers in to write the specification, it saves time. The only thing is that to make sure that when you receive the complete spec back from them, that you review it and check carefully that it meets your requirements, the performance that you put in, and your design aspirations. But I think it's a very, very useful tool.
Thank you, Patrick. And last question, just to Paul, what's next from MBS? In 30 seconds, what's next from MBS, Paul?
Well, I think I've worked at MBS for over a decade, and I think that it's the most exciting time for MBS that I can remember. We've got MBS Chorus and MBS Source now our new platform for manufacturers, but huge amounts of content and functionality being developed for MBS Chorus 2, from style sheets and being able to import from Word or building, and being able to continue that revision work. So some great functionality and really helping people to specify efficiently and keep that information up to date.
I think we're going to have to, there's another 5-6 questions I could ask, but we'll wrap that up there. Okay, so just to finish off, if you want to download the RIBA Plan of Work, search it on Google, you'll land on the architecture.com page, and the Plan of Work itself is a free download. There's an overview document over 100 pages, that's a free download, and a free little Excel toolbox as well. If you want to know more about MBS, go to the mbs.com, and if you're a specifier, find out more about Chorus here, find out more about MBS Source with this button, and if you're a construction manufacturer wanting to position your products in front of specifiers, if you click that button there, check out all the other webinars we've got up on the events page. And if you want to see some of the case studies of who's sort of using MBS Chorus at the moment, if you come to resources, case studies, you see we've got different stories from the likes of Maber Architects, Franklin Ellis, David Miller, BDP, etc. at this page. So thank you very much. Please contact us if you'd like any more information. If you want to get in touch, email address and telephone number there. Pop the feedback into the little questions mechanism. But thank you for everyone that's listened to the webinar. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.